So Mussar is a Jewish spiritual pathway of personal transformation for the sake of a better world. Each one of us has the ability to develop and evolve our personal traits, our personal characteristics, which are known as middot. Some examples of those would be patience, gratitude, generosity, order, humility, compassion. We can work with these inner traits and develop them so that instead of responding to the world in the way that I've been conditioned to respond, I can pause and think about, what are my other choices? How do I want to respond in this moment that will serve myself and this other person to a higher degree? And so Mussar is an intentional pathway of developing one's character in order to serve better in the world. What's so exciting, there's so many things exciting about Mussar, but we don't do this as individuals. We do this in community with a small group of people, about 10 people, and that's called a vad. And a vad is a Hebrew word that means group. So each person is an expert in their own soul curriculum, which is a term that was shared with us by Alan Marinas, who's the founder of the Mussar Institute, that each one of us has our own soul curriculum. We have things that we need to work on in this lifetime, so let's do it together. And when we do that, and we come into this exploration of our lives through compassion, not through fixing something that's broken, but through love and compassion and accountability, then we get rid of all the shame and blame for the places in ourselves that need to grow. We all have them. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter is known as the founder of modern Mussar, and he has a very famous quote that says, when he was young, he wanted to change the world. And when he couldn't change the world, he tried to change his town. And when he couldn't change his town, he tried to change his family. And then ultimately, as he got older, he realized the only thing he can change is himself. And if he had made changes in himself, then that would impact his family. And then they would impact the town. And then the town would impact the world. And so in Mussar, we start with ourselves. We start with doing the inner work courageously and with compassion. And when I do that, then that impacts my relationship with others. And then that impacts my relationship with the world. And when we do that in community, then we really start to make a positive difference.
Over this last year, I led a VAD, a Mussar group, for the first time that was exclusive to the 20s and 30s demographic. Often, if you go to a normal Torah study on a Shabbat morning, there's some weeks where you feel like the subject really connects to your life, but other times you feel like you're caught in the weeds of laws that don't apply anymore, or a slice of history that doesn't relate to your daily life. Mussar is always going to connect to what happened to you yesterday and what happened to you tomorrow. And so I think that was very appealing for this group.
In 2013, here at Mount Zion, we were going through strategic planning, and the headline was Strengthening Connections. And we were thinking the way most congregations think, which is, let's just teach Torah. Let's make sure people understand some of the things that are in the stories of our tradition. We teach that all the time, these important values of Judaism, but they teach them to the head. And as Rabbi Lopian teaches, we want the heart to feel what the mind already understands.
The text is yourself, primarily. We study different texts and source texts and ancient Jewish texts, modern Jewish interpretations, but the main text, I think, is each individual person. People kind of started speaking in deeper levels too, not just sharing the basics, this is what I did and this is what happened next, but then starting to explore the why and the patterns they were uncovering. So the whole practice got deeper over time.
There was a program that was being started for rabbis in New York. Rabbi Adler and I went to that, and it became clear that I had not yet developed my own practice. And I was able to do so. And it was probably one of the harder things I've done as a rabbi, is to develop it as a daily routine and that discipline, and thinking about phrases over a week and developing my own soul curriculum. So there is no question that I've grown as a human being through this process.
One of my teachers, Rabbi Rachel Cowan, of blessed memory, used to say, we do these practices because we want to be the people that our kids and grandkids want to hang out with, want to spend time with. And that really resonated. That is the contemporary consciousness that we need, is of love and of using these practices to peel away some of the messages, the unconscious messages we give ourselves and that we judge others for, so that more love can come through and we can be more fully present in the moment.
I remember I was getting an MRI after I blew out my knee in jiu-jitsu, which turned out to be not so bad, but while I was in the MRI machine with all these loud noises and not knowing how long it would take and not knowing if the prognosis or diagnosis would be bad, I remember leaning into savlanut, into patience and bearing that burden, and how else could I view that time that I was stuck in the MRI machine. And I think without Mussar lens on, I would have just cranked up the Led Zeppelin in my ears louder and just gone in that direction instead.
This is much more settling into our lives and into a loving, grounded place of center. From there, I think we can do much more powerful work.
There is joy in that. Like, I didn't realize how much I wanted to hold on to gratitude and how that is helping me with my everyday life and my relationships, and just lifting that up. Whereas before, when I first got to Mount Zion, I would have never just given a sermon on gratitude.
So I think my Mussar practice has affected a lot of people in my life. It has allowed me to step back from it, whatever the situation is, step back from the situation and listen to what the other person's going through, perhaps understanding where they're coming from a little differently so that I react different. I get to make a different choice.
The thing I find very powerful about Mussar, as Rabbi Ira Stone teaches it through his Center for Contemporary Mussar, is that it's very much grounded in the work of the relationship and how one relates to another person. Mussar was really designed for how we relate to our closest other, because in its own way, that's challenging. Think about the pain in relationships with people we're very close, siblings, spouse, but it's also easy to avoid the people who are closest to us, who sometimes we hurt.
I work with one group of 6 women who have known each other for 40 years. And they talk over each other and they give each other advice. They've been doing this for 40 years. These are strong women. And to find a way to talk about their experiences through a lens of whether they're stepping in enough or stepping out, what's their place, what's their space, but it's shifting the conversation tremendously in how they have related to one another, how they have related to their work in the past, how they're relating to grandchildren right now. It means so much to me that I'm a part of helping that.
So Michael had been on his Jewish journey, and I'd been on mine, and we're married and we're raising a family, so we're doing lots of things together, and it felt that this was a great opportunity for us to grow spiritually. And we are very different kinds of Jew, and I'm very much at peace with that. We don't have to be the same kind of Jew, but it felt like a Jewish journey where we could be companions on the journey.
Well, I think having Mandy as my chavruta has been incredibly enriching to our marriage, and to our it's another level, maybe another room of intimacy in our lives that, again, I couldn't have predicted would happen.
We had a program when I was at Shir Tikva for 6th grade students and their parents. Musar and middot really touched a lot of people, and it was a chance for parents and kids to start to have a vocabulary to communicate with one another about how we're showing up in a given moment.
It adds a level of authenticity to my being a rabbi, because it is really for me, and it's strengthened my relationships with my children, my wife, my colleagues here, and ways of learning how to meet people where they are with their own journeys in Judaism too.
So it's brought me into a closer relationship with God that I didn't even know I could say 8 years ago. And you can tell even in my hesitancy now that I'm not entirely comfortable saying it, but I wouldn't be honest if I didn't say it.
Am I holding back my anger and keeping my heart open to people who I disagree with or who I'm struggling with? Those are all the way that Mussar, all the different ways that Mussar plays out in my life on a regular basis in everything that I do. Simple as being at a stoplight, being at the grocery store, being at work, being with friends, of course with family, it plays out a lot. Different situations like that.
I don't deal with the same impatience driving anymore. I just I don't deal with that anymore. I deal with all kinds of things, but I don't deal with that anymore. And I can credit Mussar with some of that.
The more you practice it, the more it'll be there when you need it. And it has made a huge difference in my life and my work.
When the various nationally based Mussar teachers have come to our community, we've gathered together the Va'ad leaders. And it was wonderful to see across the community and across denominations the various synagogues that were represented in the room. And it was a wonderful moment to have so many people who were Mussar practitioners who saw each other, who might have known each other in different contexts, but had no idea that they were, all practicing Mussar, all to be in the same room together and to find that that kind of energy is possible.
A thing that I found really exciting about Mussar, both my own learning and practice and getting to share it with others, is that it helps people to relate to Jewish tradition and to our texts in a way that opens them up in ways that maybe they haven't felt was available to them.
What I have found with teaching Mussar is that the people that it's touching are frequently people who do not find their Judaism particularly meaningful. And what they're finding in this is concepts that they might know elsewhere, but they're finding it in a Jewish lens. They're finding a language that they can talk about and they can hold on to, and they say how relevant this is making their Judaism. That's huge. They might not be synagogue goers. They might not be anyone who wants to do a Torah text study, but they get this idea that who they are Jewishly has a relevance to them.
It feels vital, and it feels full of like regenerative power for me as a Jew. Like I converted into being a Jew from being a Jew. Just like, how cool is that?
How wonderful would it be when there's a critical mass of people, including leadership, within a given synagogue who are Mussar practitioners, if it began to have an impact on the way the synagogue does its business, on the way the board conducts its business.
To expand the set of voices that are in Mussar materials that are printed and on blogs and what have you, I think it's really important that not just rabbis or Jewish educators are encouraged to write about this subject, but rather engineers and restaurant workers and all sorts of people, because I really connected to reading writings of rabbis who said, when I'm teaching a young child and they're da-da-da-da, because those are the things that I do in my daily life. But I want anyone who's in a Mussar program or reading a Mussar book to be able to relate to the day-to-day reflections that are in there, and so it's important that people of non-Jewish professional backgrounds are also encouraged to contribute to the developing Mussar canon.
And one of the nice things is if we do more in the Twin Cities, if people can start to talk about, we can begin to articulate what our differences are, then people can choose, maybe on the basis of what they think will work best for them as a participant as well.
Well, I know that in the 5 VODs that I'm leading right now, the language is changing, and the way they are walking in the world, the way they're seeing things, the way their eyes have opened to things, is changing who they are. And if they change who they are, it changes someone else, because it changes their relationship with the next person. And while the next person might not be studying Mussar, it continues to spread itself out, ripple out. Because of what one person learns, they send it out into the world.
So it would be wonderful, halavai as we say, if only, you know, the whole world would decide that these were the values by which we all want to live. Wouldn't that be nice? That would be amazing. It would be more than nice, it would be amazing, and that would bring the Messiah for sure. But until then, if little pockets and little places can do that, then other places can say, ooh, maybe we want what they have. Ooh, maybe we want more of what they have.
And I think that's helpful, like if in a community, if everybody has that kind of consciousness, it's a much more pleasant community to be in, right?
The time that we are living in, if there is suffering in our world, that is not inseparable from joy. And Nachman of Wrocław taught that beautifully in so many ways, because in a time when you can think about all the things that could bring you down, there are ways, just small touch points that can lift you up. And that's what he did, that's what Mussar is doing for us as well.
People that were in the facilitators training, they've all said, oh, I wish Mussar had gotten to me when I was younger. Oh, you're teaching middle schoolers, right? You should make the curriculum all about Mussar for them even. So there's definitely a feeling that this is really valuable language at whatever age.
I think Mussar is a way for me as someone who's Jewish to work with others to make the world a better place.
It's been my experience that this is a wonderful pathway to reconnecting to Judaism and how it speaks to our lives and to the world.
So where is Mussar heading? Well, what I can tell you is that here in the Twin Cities, we have an incredible think tank of people who, given resources, can create amazing things. So as I've been in conversations with people all across the country about Mussar, they wonder what's happening here in the Twin Cities that's inspiring and making all of these Mussar groups pop up. And the way I look at it is really through the lens of metaphor, using a sunflower. So a sunflower has roots that go deep into the soil. And so if we imagine that in Mussar, those roots are Judaism and Mussar. And then surrounding those roots is the soil, which is providing resources and support in order for Mussar to flourish. From those roots and from that soil, up grows a sunflower. And that represents a facilitator. And then at the top of the stem, you have a seed pod, which to me represents a VOD, a Mussar VOD. And all of the petals are the participants. And what happens at the end of the season? So one of those seeds, or a few of those seeds, might fall to the ground and take root. And then by us providing nourishment and resources to that seed, it grows as a facilitator. And a VOD, or a Mussar group, forms. And then there's participants that benefit from that. And then from that sunflower, another seed goes into the ground. And before we know it, instead of having one sunflower, we have a whole field of sunflowers. And that's the idea of peer-to-peer Mussar, growing and creating a community that helps feed and regenerate the soil with nourishment and nutrients, new ideas, and interpretations on classic text. And in that way, we all grow together.